Sorry, that's just anti-trans.
Anyway, I want to watch this next. So, we have one of those things that apparently trans people don't believe, which is trapped in the wrong body. There we go. So many trans people don't believe this that it's literally in our titles and stuff. Trapped in the wrong body. My MTF transgender childhood story. Diagnosing dysphoria in trans kids. Now, hey, listen. If they immediately say something like, I say trapped in the wrong body, it's literally just a metaphor or whatever, I would probably be forgiving. And it does depend on what this person says. So I'm just being clear there. But it's not a great start, is what I'm trying to say. But I'm interested in people's stories and stuff like that. It's interesting the patterns. It's interesting comparing it to my kind of faulty logic from when I was younger. So yeah, I don't know. Let's have a look. Someone called Kira, who apparently is a psychologist or something. Let's have a look. So devastating. They tell kids they're born in the wrong body. Yeah. Like, and Sarah McBride was literally reading a book to kids saying as much. It's kind of messed up.
Hi, I'm Kira, a transgender woman and psychologist who shares my experience of
There you go, psychologist. How good am I?
transitioning from male to female. Last time, I shared my story
Transitioning to female. Already problematic language. You really cannot transition to female. You will always be male. One guide isn't very gender neutral. I'm not very gender neutral. I was born male. Hope you're good, Blackie Cat. Half of Queenman's stream is, okay, join the Discord and argue with me on VC or you're banned. Yes! Why do you think I watch him? It's based. I wish I was braver. But I don't know. My audience is too small. If I piss everyone off, then it'll never grow, I guess. But I don't know. There's a lot of very sensitive people, it turns out. So that's probably going to happen either fucking way. I mean, I've literally had people, because they say shit that I make very clear that I don't like, things like violent rhetoric and stuff. I mute them temporarily for that, and then they come back being like, oh, I'm unsubbing, you don't like free speech. And it's like, well, I was pretty clear on my positions. Am I a Blair White clone? No, I don't think I'm a Blair White clone at all. Hi, Remy. I'm kind of concerned that the next thing is just going to be calling me a bootlicker, but I will give you the benefit of the doubt. I hope you're good. Maybe if you watch a bit, you'll understand. Anyway, where were we? We got 2 seconds in, and I already paused and went off for like 5 minutes. Let's just start from the start. Fuck me.
Hi, I'm Kira, a transgender woman and psychologist who shares my experience of transitioning from male to female. Last time,
Yeah, no, I got stopped because they said female. You can't transition to female. That's just not possible. You will be male forever.
shared my story of experiencing gender dysphoria in my early years. If you haven't watched it, I highly encourage you to check it out. I will leave a link in the description below. Today we'll talk more about diagnosing gender dysphoria in minors, using my own primary school years as an example. Girls go first, you stay here.
Actually,
The first
I actually quite like Blair White's content. I think if you take away like the bad faith bullshit that people like ContraPoints put into your head and just kind of hear her for what she's saying and try and take it as honest, you have a far better time of it. And that's not to say that I agree with everything she says. I mean, I'm not a conservative, for example. A lot of the... I have to ignore an awful lot of stuff whenever it's fucking election season, you know, put it that way. But I don't know. If you treat people like they're being honest and that everyone isn't just grifting and whatever shit, then honestly, you might be surprised at how reasonable some people are and how unreasonable others are, because all they're doing is...
I love you, Mary.
You know, lying
I've
about
made
people.
prediction about this. You know how millennials and Gen Zers come out about how abusive their religious families were to them and how it wrecked them psychologically. I predict this same thing happening with these trans kids by 2030.
Yeah, quite possibly. Thank you, Asami Yamazaki. Thank you. Yeah, that's the thing, actually. People compare me to Blair White. At least they're not calling me like Lily Tino or something. That would be genuinely
You're
offensive to me.
anti-trans.
Oh, thank you, Blackie Cat. Thanks for following.
phrase said by my teacher that comes to my mind when I'm being asked about my primary school. I heard it countless times while waiting in the line at the school cafeteria. This short phrase coming from an adult whom I respected and listened to hurt me every single time. It created an impossible barrier between the other girls and me. I tried arguing with the teacher cafeteria. The first phrase school years as an example. Girls
Okay, I'm not being mean. I'm going to put subtitles on. There's a bit of an ESL thing. It's not this person's fault, obviously.
Diagnosing gender dysphoria in minors, using my own primary school years as an example. Girls go first, you stay here. This the first phrase said by my teacher that comes to my mind when I'm being asked about my primary school.
So, you were a boy, so you weren't regarded as a girl. Don't really know what to say to that, really.
I heard it countless times while waiting in the line.
I want to own a Barbie pink Mustang. Yeah, of course. Like, the way I dress, the way I go around. Like, yeah, I'm all about that neon pink life, you know what I mean?
At the school cafeteria. This short phrase coming from an adult whom I respected and listened to hurt me every single time. It
So they're hurt being referred to as a boy when they were a boy.
created an impossible barrier between the other girls and me. I tried arguing with the teacher, but it was pointless.
You tried arguing that you were actually a girl when you were a boy. Yeah, I can see why that didn't go well for you. I'm sorry. Like, I respect people transitioning, but you can't be delusional about it. You can't just say, oh, well, I'm a female, I'm a woman, you know what I mean? Like, I was a girl when I was a kid, when I was clearly not. Like, there's only so far my sympathy can ever go. If you're coming off as delusional, then unfortunately, I'm going to say it how I see it. That's kind of how it is.
Because I was seen as a boy and was expected to behave like one.
Expected to behave like one. No, they asked you to stay behind because they wanted the girls to go first. That's what you said. That doesn't mean anything when it comes to expected you to behave like anything. The other girls, I mean, yeah, I know, right? I know. I'm concerned already.
Several times I complained to my boyfriends about this unfairness, but they just shrugged and ignored my.
Did they complain that they weren't being treated like a girl? Or did they complain that the girls had to go first and they saw that as unfair and they're reframing it? It's very difficult to tell. Oh, hi, Big Smokey. I'm watching a video about transgender childhood story by this person called Kira. I hope you could... Is he trying to convince himself or the teacher? At least she passed. She looks alright, yeah. The brow is a bit of a giveaway, but I can hardly talk. I mean, Jesus Christ, look at this. Fucking hell. Massive.
My words. I knew I shouldn't be separated from other girls, but couldn't do anything.
You knew. Like, this is what I mean. How are we not just pushing delusion? How am I supposed to see this as anything else? The way that you talk about this. I want to feel sympathy because they're probably from a post-Soviet shithole. Are they? I don't know. I can't tell what the accent is. I was assuming like French or something, but hey, I don't know. Transphobia probably a real thing there. I mean, transphobia is a real thing everywhere, technically. It's just very hard to talk about because whenever you say transphobia, you're invoking all this that other people have attached to the phrase transphobia, instead of it actually just meaning hating trans people. Like, intersectionality and like fucking theories and so on have a lot to answer for because we've started lumping so many different things in with transphobia, homophobia, racism, etc., etc. It's gone so far from its original meaning that people just stop taking it seriously. And then it's like, well, shit, there's still racism, there's still sexism, there's still transphobia. But how do you fucking talk about it when it's not a concept that almost anyone takes seriously anymore? You know what I mean? It's frustrating.
Think about it. I was excluded. Thrown out. In the first grades, I had a couple of friends, among both boys and 4 girls. I tried to be the 5th one, as they accepted me as one of them. Talking about makeup, perfumes, playing dolls and drawing felt so natural to me.
Okay, no, I am actually hearing the kind of Soviet accent a bit more. They might be. Fair enough. Talking about makeup, perfumes, playing dolls, drawing, can kind of see why actual women find this kind of thing insulting. Yeah, there's a difference between transphobia in the West and Eastern Europe. Yeah, probably is, to be fair. That's fair enough. I get you. But yeah, I can see why people find this insulting. We're leaning heavily on stereotypes here. Like, how does any of this mean that you're not just like a feminine male? Like, I like makeup. You know what I mean? Does that make me a woman?
and never required extra effort. Friendships with my two boyfriends were based on mutual interests, not on gender roles or
Wait, but how did those mutual interests, makeup, perfumes, playing dolls, and drawing, are those not mutual interests? Sounds Romanian. Maybe a little bit, yeah. I'm not sure. I mean, Romanians sound kind of French because their language is based on Latin. It's really odd. Like, it's most of Western Europe. The language is based on Latin. And then the other one is just randomly Romania. Interesting. But yeah, these are mutual interests. Makeup, perfumes, playing dolls, that kind of thing. Those are mutual interests.
playing dolls and drawing felt so natural to me and never required extra effort. Friendships with my two boyfriends were based on mutual interests, not on gender roles.
You haven't described gender roles or behavior earlier. You described mutual interests. And then are trying to separate that by saying, well, when it's with my guy friends, it's mutual interests. But that's what you just described with your female friends. That's bizarre.
Or behavior. In 4th grade, I was friends with a small girl who was 5 or 6 years old. We didn't share any mutual interests or had thoughtful talks, but we played a game, rarely seen among boys, mother and daughter. We went on walks, pretended to cook and eat, dressed her dolls, and played as though I was teaching her. For me, this was an expression of my caregiving and nurturing emotions.
Why can't a male have caregiving, nurturing emotions? Hey, I'm from a post-Soviet shithole. Not every post-Soviet country has the same attitude towards trans people. That's fair enough as well. Listen, I gotta say, I have very little experience
You're
with
anti-trans.
those kind of places, so... Oh, thank you, Awkward Bat. You're anti-trans, I guess. I'm sorry. There's just a joke. You're not actually anti-trans. I guess I'm tired of grifters. YouTube recommended me out of nowhere. I'll give you the better. Oh, fair enough. I appreciate that. Thank you. There's a lot of grifters out there. It's just... You never really know who's who. You just have to kind of trust people. And it's hard to know who those people are. The women found this relatable. I don't think I ever talked about it with my female friends. I would be surprised if they did. We're kind of pushing, we're actually pushing like sex roles. We're actually pushing kind of stereotypes, which comes back to whether some of the stuff that you hear from these trans people is actually kind of a bit sexist. You know what I mean?
Role-playing as mother and daughter is more common among girls due to traditional gender roles and societal expectations.
Traditional gender roles. So we're pushing like traditionality. And the problem is, like, there's a lot of mixed messages because we'll describe things as mutual interests when it's boys, but like gender roles when it's girls. But the things you describe are interests. It's a bit concerning coming from like a psychologist, you know what I mean?
Boys may also engage in such games, but they often try to avoid
Exhibit A.
being labeled by female gender roles. I was okay with being her mom. In my childhood, I was...
The other thing is, do boys never like pretend to be girls? Like ever? Like put on, I don't know, like whatever the fuck. It's probably not common, but that doesn't mean that they're a girl, you know what I mean?
I was closely connected to my mother. There was no pressure from her. I just enjoyed spending time together. We spent a lot of free time traveling, having picnics, walking the dog, discussing
Okay, no, only women walk dogs, so now I completely agree with this person.
books, doing groceries, and talking about everything. The only unspoken rule was that everything should fit a conservative worldview. She raised me alone after my father's death, and in her
I mean, how would I even begin? You know what I mean? And hey, this kind of suggests rebelling, you know, the rebellious kind of shit. We were watching a thing about Elon Musk yesterday. It's very, very obvious that his child is doing a rebellious teenager thing to an extent. Like, mentioning, like, conservative worldview, that just makes it sound like you rebelled. What's the biggest thing you can do to rebel against, like, your conservative parents? Decide that you're the other sex, I guess. It just... I don't know. None of it makes you the other sex. That's the thing. None of it makes you something other than what you are. And like you can embrace your malehood and still go around looking like this. You know what I mean? That's what I've done.
Descending tried to replace him. Unfortunately, that was not possible. More so, it was harmful. I saw how hard she tried to raise me, and I felt like I owed her. It wasn't a financial
And then father leaving, would that have potentially skewed your attitude towards males? Not sure.
debt, but a mental one. I owed her not to disappoint her, to give some dividends for the time, effort, and health she invested in me. My mom and I never discussed topics such as sexual
Is being trans a DNA thing? I can't tell if you're joking.
identities, diversity, and gender expression. These subjects were considered as unworthy of our time.
Oh wait, no, because it's like innate, I guess. Yeah. Hey, maybe he's autistic. That's the same thing, right?
And my main source of information remained the same: TV and newspapers. There was one exception: the movie Brokeback Mountain.
Hi, Craig Wallace. I'm watching someone talk about their transgender childhood. Hope you're good.
It tells a story about two gay cowboys struggling with their feelings. The film was groundbreaking, as stories about gay people were rarely shown to such a broad audience. It was considered provocative, and society met it with dirty jokes. I watched this movie alone, without my mom knowing. The reason was simple: I didn't want to hear any negativity or misunderstanding toward people I empathized with. Looking back now, it feels ironic, because of what my mom told
The sad part is, how do you know your mother would have been like that?
me when I came out to her as a transgender woman. I would have understood better if you told me that you were gay. My grandmother remained the same
Well, yeah, because you can be gay, you can't be the other sex.
harbor of acceptance without judgment. I had access to her closet, where I already knew the location of my own shelf with clothes. I loved spending time with her, but it happened only a couple of times a month. My grandma used to take me shopping. Usually she looked for
What does a female brain feel like exactly? Well, you get this uncontrollable urge to go shopping and to cook and clean, no matter where you are and what you're doing. That's what it feels like.
makeup, accessories, and
That was a joke, by the way.
clothes, and never forgot to buy something for me. I saw this as a small breath of fresh air and cherished every opportunity. I still remember the two knitted scarves that she bought me in the women's section of the store. They didn't look feminine at all, but the only fact of wearing a female accessory publicly felt
Yeah, so we're more interested in the label of something than what it actually is. I don't know about that at all.
exciting and affirming to me. Being with my grandmother gave me a small outlet to release my inner pressure. The first time I saw a transgender woman in real life was also with my grandmother. She took me on trips, and once we went to Thailand. Besides traditional sightseeing
Went to Thailand, wow. Wealthy family, maybe? Not sure.
tours, we attended a night show where all performers were trans women. For many visitors, it was a novelty, a chance to glimpse on something new and forbidden. Since I was a child and had little
Wait, are Thai, like, what we call ladyboys, are they the same as trans women? I don't know about that. In Thailand, the attitude is very much that you're still a man.
information about trans women, I was shocked and amazed when my grandmother told that all the artists were born in male bodies and transitioned to women. Their smooth hand movements, slim bodies,
Is that even true?
long hair, makeup, and feminine gowns made it hard to believe that they were born in male bodies. I had many questions and constantly asked my grandmother. She answered as best as she could, but the main two questions, how they became transgender women and how is it possible to transition, remained unanswered. After the show, at the exit we saw a donation box labeled Donations for Surgeries. Reading the explanation, I learned that gender-affirming surgeries are a big part of transitioning and require significant financial investments. For years, I believed surgeries were the only requirement for transitioning. Later, I discovered hormone replacement therapy, realizing it's just one part of the process. This day laid one of the cornerstones for my transition. I realized transitioning is possible. Transgender people can live and function normally in society, and trans women can look feminine and beautiful. This was my first objective information about transgender people. In this and previous video, I focused mainly on my prepubertal years. This demonstrates
I've heard of Patty. I watched a thing about Mr. Swirl. I think he spent a lot of time there.
that there were no sexual reasons for my gender incongruence, as no
I mean, that doesn't demonstrate anything, quite frankly, is the story you're telling. How true it is extremely difficult to kind of determine, because you have an impetus to tell it a certain way. You have an impetus for people to think of it a certain way. It might not be sexual. It isn't for everyone. I personally don't think it is. I think that there are a lot of different causes of like being trans depending on who you are. Like, there's a lot of different ways that you can be led to that same conclusion. Even if you think you'll always be a man, do you think it's okay to call you her? I usually just use the trans pronouns the person portrays as. I think it's okay to call someone anyone. I think that, honestly, pronouns, we need to stop being so precious about them and stop caring about them quite so much. Just let people call each other what they want, quite honestly. You're calling me a he, you are ultimately calling a male person a he. I don't see why I'd get offended by that personally.
No sex hormones were produced yet. For a time, I tried to explain myself, me being a trans woman.
I just don't think this is true. And like, can't you end up like sexualizing things as a result of like childhood experiences? I'm not sure about this. I don't know. I've watched a lot of true crime, and you get a lot of weird shit that happens in people's like childhoods, and then they end up developing these like crazy like fetishes and stuff. Some of them, not all of them. It doesn't have to happen that way. I'm not saying that if that's happened to you, you have that kind of thing, but I really am not sure about this. That this person is a psychologist, and like it's quite dicey, the kind of things they're saying.
As a result of my father's death, this explanation almost fit my reality, but there was one discrepancy. I had symptoms of gender dysphoria before he passed away. Considering the 5th edition of...
These people have like very vivid like memories of their childhood, by the way. I barely remember mine at all. Is that just me? I don't get it.
Diagnostic and Statistical Manual.
Fetishes can arrive from events in childhood. Yeah, I'm really not sure. This feels like we're kind of twisting things for the purposes of like self-soothing, for the purposes of pushing a certain narrative about ourselves. You know what I mean? I just don't think any of this is true. I'm sorry. Might be. But even if the events that they're telling are all true, this is just the post hoc rationalization of it, right?
Of mental disorders, or DSM. Gender dysphoria.
Yeah, the symptoms of gender dysphoria we're talking about are liking makeup, stuff like that. I don't know. I don't know how old this person is. I kind of wonder.
In children is defined as a distress caused by incongruence between one's assigned sex at birth and gender identity. The 5th edition of Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, or DSM. Gender dysphoria in children is defined as a distress caused by incongruence between one's assigned sex at birth and gender identity.
So how do we show that in any one person, especially after the fact where they're now grown up? All we really have to show for it is stuff like, well, I played with this kind of stuff as a kid. I talked about this kind of stuff as a kid. I was interested in this kind of stuff as a kid. Is that gender dysphoria? And like, again, gender identity, like I can't shake the feeling that gender identity is just something people make up. Like, how do you show gender identity in a way that isn't just based on like stereotypes and isn't just based in like imitation? The symptoms of gender dysphoria are shallow. Yeah, they seem that way. Like, the thing is, the way that I understand gender dysphoria is that, yeah, a lot of it kind of is based in stereotypes. And it doesn't make me like female. It doesn't make me a woman. But like, I've accepted that and I talk about it that way. This person is kind of saying, I'm female. I'm trapped in the wrong body. I'm actually a girl. And that's just not true. And I don't know why I have to listen to idiots like Jammy Dodger. Oh, trans people know what biology is. They don't actually think they're women. Like, no, they clearly some of them do. This person's a psychologist. What kind of other people do they deal with? What kind of other people do they put those kind of ideas into the heads of? You know what I mean? Everyone's an unreliable narrator about their own childhood, but especially this kind of why I'm trans narrative. Yeah. And the problem is people like eat this shit up. I mean, Yeah, parents should listen to their children. Like, you don't know, you weren't there, mate. Like, are you real? Are you for real? It's concerning. It's very concerning. Very, very, very concerning in my opinion. I cried at 7 for not being able to wear tights and skirt to dance with my female classmates, but I've not acted feminine at all in my life. Maybe you don't have gender dysphoria. Well, then what are you basing gender dysphoria on? Because this person could use this as a way of saying, this is how I know I've always been trans and I'm actually a woman on the inside. You know what I mean? So everything they're saying, someone else could say, well, I did all of that, but I'm still a man. I don't actually feel gender dysphoria. I mean, one of the explanations could be that some people go through phases and then desist, and then you get others that don't desist. But it's very hard to say because it's like very unscientific, I guess, which seems like an odd way to criticize something like this. But yeah, we're talking about a psychologist here. No long-term studies, yikes. Hirschfeld, also yikes, killed someone. You should read Page Boy. It's a manual in retconning the whole existence for your current belief. I have no trouble believing that. I don't know if I'm ever going to read Page Boy, but I have no trouble believing that.
The DSM-5-TR outlines 8 diagnostic criteria for gender dysphoria in children. A diagnosis is made only if a child meets 6 out of 8 criteria for at least 6 months, and they are causing a significant criteria for GFS. Let's discuss
Okay, we're going to go into the criteria. Good.
This criteria more specifically, using my own experience as example. A strong desire.
See, do you know what's really tricky? Whenever these people do this, it's like, well, now, if I'm going to start criticizing this whole thing, if I'm going to start criticizing the criteria that we're using to diagnose gender dysphoria, I'm also criticizing this person because this person is using themselves as an example. I don't know that this is some kind of trap, but it feels a bit like one. You know what I mean? Also, you can give this person money, I guess. Oh my God. For £40.17, you can book a one-on-one video talk with this person. Hang on. If I move this, can you see it? Can you see it? Yeah, you can't really see it very well. That says one-on-one video talk with me. Book a private Zoom talk with me. Maybe I can expand it. There we go. Here we go. Here we go. Personalized advice based on my experience with a trans woman. If there's anything relating to trans, gender dysphoria, etc., etc. Yikes. Yikes. I don't know, man. Should we be charging money to talk to you? I don't charge to fucking talk to me. Anyone can fucking talk to me if they want. And I have more subscribers than this person. Not that I'm crowing, but I am a little bit.
To be of the other gender, or in an
strong desire to be of the other gender. Well, I mean, I guess that's what gender dysphoria implies. To me, gender dysphoria is just being unhappy with your sex or gender, you know what I mean?
insistence that one is the other gender. Yes, I associated myself with girls. I wanted to be one of them and to be treated as one. This became more visible during my primary school years, when I reacted painfully on being separated from the...
And by the way, it's important to remember, at the start of this, they were saying, I'm male to female, I'm become female. When I was a kid, I wanted to be in with the other girls. When they said, you wait because the girls go first, I found that offensive because I believed myself to be a girl. Now we're saying I have gender dysphoria. Those are two very different things. Just bear in mind that.
Other girls by my teacher. A strong preference for wearing clothes typical of the opposite gender.
There we go, clothes. So this part is just fashion.
Yes, I enjoyed wearing female clothes. I loved the fabrics and styles.
And the problem is, so far, like a strong desire, maybe not, but so far some of these, like you can have like strong preferences towards like female clothes and stuff. Doesn't mean you have gender dysphoria. It doesn't make you trans. And the problem is that I think I'm going to have is like the inference is that makes you the other sex to what you are. And that just is not possible. I don't know, the only OG trans person in my life made the transition at 5 years old. It wasn't a girl to boy trans. It was a transition from one person to a whole ass person of the other gender, brought on really bad early life trauma. Yeah, that can happen. I mean, hey, you get things like DID from trauma that's bad enough. Can really like destroy your psyche, you know.
The simple fact that something was bought in a female section of the store.
Yeah, this idea about labels. Well, it has to be bought in a female section of a store. So what if you buy a t-shirt that's the exact same as like one that you'd buy for a man, but they're marketing it as female clothes? Like, I don't get this insistence on like labels and stuff. Isn't it more about the form? You know what I mean? Like, what if you gave someone some clothes saying, hey, this is from the women's, and so they like it, and they put it on, and they're really happy in it, and then later on you say, oh, by the way, that actually came from the men's section. Like, what would happen? I don't know.
Made me feel the sense of belonging. Thankfully, for a period I had access to my grandma.
What's actually the difference between being a cross-dresser and being trans? Like, let's say you cross-dress every day, and a trans person dresses that way every day. Taking identity out of the equation because you cannot prove or disprove identity. What's actually really the difference between a cross-dresser and a trans person? Especially considering more and more trans people kind of have to do like cross-dressing stuff like that. And that's the be-all and end-all because they can't get treatment straight away. So what's actually the difference?
Mother's closet, a strong preference for cross-gender roles in make-believe play or fantasy play. Yes, this was highly evident in my game of mother and daughter with my girlfriend. I also often preferred playing female characters in video games or choosing female names for them. A strong preference for toys, games, or activities stereotypically associated with the other gender. Yes.
Oof, we're getting a bit Diane Aronsaft here. So what's the inference? In your early years, you see your male kid playing with like dolls. Could that lead you a certain way?
In my early years, I played with dolls, made bracelets from beads, knitted, and collected flowers to make perfumes. A strong preference for playmates of the other gender. True as well, most of my friends were girls. I felt much more comfortable with them compared to...
Like, at least some of this as well. It sounds like we're describing like a gay kid or like just an effeminate boy, you know what I mean? Should we be pathologizing being effeminate as a boy? Like, apart from the first criteria, it feels like a lot of this is kind of pathologizing, just being feminine as a boy. Why would we be doing that?
To boys. In any situation, I sought out girls first for friendships.
Okay, just to be clear, when I say about like cross-dressing, I literally mean just wearing the other fucking wearing the other gender's clothes, like stereotypically. I don't necessarily mean any of the other stuff because it can mean lots of things. People do it for all sorts of reasons. Oh, hi, Good Guy Johnson. I have pretty different takes to what most trans people say in public. Yep, very true. Are my views held by many in the community? Not many, but I think a growing amount, personally. I hope you're good.
Only if there were no girls available, I switched to boys, or preferred to stay alone. The boys I befriended were those with whom I could avoid boyish topics or behavior. A strong rejection of toys, games, or activities typical of one's assigned gender.
Wait, so one of them is preferring playing with one kind of toys, and the other one is rejecting those kind of toys? Like, couldn't that have been like one criteria, really? Oh, hi, Nick Grimes. Hope you're good. Plenty of trans people don't do permanent things either. Not everyone, anyway. And being algorithms, yeah, it happens. It happens. I'm glad. It's been kind of happening as much as I can make it happen. Hopefully it continues, you know. By the way, make sure you like the stream. Make sure you check the links in my description. You can check out some music that I've made. You can buy, you can stream on Spotify. You can also super chat via Streamlabs. My Discord link is probably wrong. I do apologize. If you want to join, then find my newest video, which does have the right link. And I am monetized on Twitch, so you can go on there, I guess. Anyway.
This one is mixed for me. While I preferred typically girl toys, I also had cars and construction sets. I could play with both. A strong dislike of one's sexual anatomy. No, my real understanding of anatomical differences came at the age of 10 during sexual education classes. I felt neutral about my anatomy, and this didn't change until adulthood. A strong desire for the physical sex.
Trans people also transition personality. They shouldn't really. They shouldn't. Like, people do, but part of it is like the politicization that you go through. Like, if you come out as trans, most likely you're going to go looking for a community, which is probably going to be on the internet because there's only so many trans people out there. And the trans communities on the internet, like trans internet culture is pretty fucking wretched in my opinion, honestly. Like, it's like sucking people in to this bizarre cult way of thinking where you start hearing all these fucking mantras. And so I think that kind of is what fucks with people's personalities. Like, your personality doesn't have to change at all. And for plenty of trans people, it really doesn't.
Characteristics that match one's experienced gender. Yes, but this came later in the middle school during puberty. At the age of 12, I felt breast pain and forming breast buds
Okay, I do not even remotely believe this.
under my skin.
Unless this person transitioned as a child and like was actually taking cross-sex hormones at the age of 12, I don't believe this at all. I'm sorry.
I experienced a mix of excitement and fear. Excitement because I was congruent with my body, and fear
I don't believe this. I'm sorry. I don't believe a word of this.
because I was afraid of my mom's reaction. I was sure she would take me to a doctor for treatment. I met 6 out of 8 criteria for diagnosis of gender dysphoria.
Yeah, and what is this serving? Like, this means that I'm definitely a real woman. This means that I'm definitely trans. It's like, who are you talking to exactly? You want people to validate you. That's what it feels like. Like, there is research. WPATH 8 edition standard of care. WPATH is crazy. Like, you got to be very careful trusting WPATH. So a trans person post about something how when they got their hormones for the first time, it was like them being born. That is not uncommon. People talk about like starting their life and stuff like that. Sometimes you get people who never really clicked with anything. They don't really find their passions and stuff. And trans can be something to latch onto, and it can feel that way. I think I probably used to say that kind of shit as well, unfortunately. And I was one of those people. Like, I mean, I was in a fucking rut, you know. I was like 23, 24. I couldn't really seem to make anything work, when in fact I was just quite stunted. And like, as I kept going, like got jobs and like learned so much more about the world and like spent more time interacting with people, I started to kind of improve a lot because of that. And it was very easy for me to see that as like, you know, my transition kind of helping me in that way, when actually I think I was just growing up, and that the transition thing was kind of ancillary to that, if that's the right word. I'm not sure. High confirmation bias.
Children. The only missing piece was that my distress wasn't verbalized. There were no discussions about such topics with my family, and I didn't have enough information or courage to initiate such conversations myself. Meeting the
And don't forget, you've shown that by clinical standards you meet the standard for gender dysphoria. Fair enough, you probably do. I'm not generally questioning that. I'm not saying you don't experience gender dysphoria. It's more the claims about being trapped in the wrong body. It's more the claims about, I literally thought I was a girl in school and got confused when they said to wait because the girls go first. It's about using terms like becoming female when that's a sex term. You can't become a female.
those criteria would have been a valid reason to consult
To be fair, I consider woman a sex term as well. You can't become a woman either.
psychiatrist or clinical psychologist for further investigation and diagnosis.
So a news article from several years ago with an interview with a sexologist in my country pretty much said that there's some sort of observable brain difference in trans people. Quite often what I find, first off, there's like observable differences to a certain extent with like gay men and straight men, like more effeminate men and stuff like that. Second off, quite often that research is that kind of research, it's often like post-HRT. So it's like, yeah, the HRT has had an effect on your brain, and now you're looking at it and saying, well, their brains are different. When it's like, well, yeah, because you've artificially changed something about yourself. If you took that person before they were taking HRT, their brain probably looked kind of like your average male one. And the other thing about brains is, like, there is some evidence of like dimorphism, but I'm pretty sure quite a lot of them is to do with like cranium size. Like they grow slightly differently because of that. So like women's brains are a bit more packed in because their cranium is smaller. And there's really only so much evidence that brains are really all that sexual dimorphic. Like there's a lot of overlap from what I understand.
With professional help and therapy, my gender incongruence
Access to their grandmother's clothes. Yep, that seemed to be the case.
could have been diagnosed. Back
Oh, they said it was congenital. Jesus Christ. I'd need to see some evidence for that one, I think.
then, in 90s, it was called gender identity disorder. Unfortunately, this wasn't possible in my situation. In 1994, the DSM-4 was implemented, and in 2000, the DSM-4-TR, or text revision, was published. Today's DSM-5-TR provides clear criteria for diagnosing gender dysphoria in minors, and they significantly differ from those in adults. We'll discuss the diagnostics of gender dysphoria in adolescents and adults in future videos. I want to emphasize that not all transgender people experience dysphoria in their early years.
So what have we proved? That you're true trans, I guess? I don't know, man. I don't know what this is in service of.
Many factors such as societal norms, relationships in families, access to information and therapy, psychological and sexual development can significantly impact the timing of first noticeable symptoms of gender dysphoria. However, there is a statistical tendency of noticing them at an early age. Research published on the website of National Institute of Health reports that more than a half of transgender men and transgender women experience gender dysphoria before the age of 7. The mean age is between 6.1 and 6.7 for trans men and trans women respectively. The Institute of Health reports that more than a half of transgender men and transgender
Bear in mind, this is all going to be based like on testimony, retroactively. So any one of these data points is only as reliable as the person talking to you. And like, if this is from like clinical data, like taken from what people are saying to their like clinicians, people will exaggerate this kind of thing because they want their treatment. You know what I mean? So that there isn't really the kind of reliable data.
women experience gender dysphoria before the age of 7. The mean age is between 6.1
Or is he saying painful boobs at 12? Either some kind of delusion, which probably should have been dealt with, or lies. I don't know. Or maybe there's some actual reason. Maybe they had some kind of health thing at the time. Who knows? The problem is things happen and then people interpret them a certain way. But interpreting that your tits hurt as a boy when you were 12, when you couldn't have had breasts, doesn't make you a woman. And everything this person's saying, there's absolutely no reason why you would extrapolate any of this and say, oh, that means you must actually be a woman.
1 and 6.7 for trans men and trans women respectively. In all cases, regardless of age, it is crucial to seek professional help.
And my overriding feeling with all of this is that we're just pathologizing like gender differences. We're just pathologizing like gender nonconformity. Like there's plenty of people that would meet almost all of these criteria, but they don't identify as trans and they don't think that they're a woman. You know what I mean? Or think that they're a man when they're the opposite.
Help once symptoms of gender dysphoria appear and persist. Without guidance and support, such symptoms can develop into chronic distress, depression, and changes of personality.
I would definitely need a source for this kind of thing.
I would like to ask about your own experiences of having gender dysphoria during your school years. What is your first memory of it?
Like when I was a kid, I definitely felt a bit more drawn to like feminine shit, which is just how I am naturally. And like, I'm sure at least once I felt like I'd rather have been born a girl than born a boy. But none of that makes you female. And the problem is, You don't know what they're kind of changing in their head. You don't know what they're kind of twisting in the interpretation. You don't know what people are misremembering, because human memories are actually very unreliable. Like, I don't know, think of something you watched as a kid or watched when you were younger, and think of like some lines from like a movie that you saw. If you watched it now, you might find that some of those lines were actually quite different from how you remember them. Human memories are not very reliable. So kind of post hoc going back to your school years and thinking about when you were younger, you don't actually know what you might be kind of butchering because your own memory is not serving you well, because that's just not how good memories normally are.
How did it feel? Did you have any professional help or support? Please share your stories in the comments. I read every single one of them. If you find value in my content, want to support my work...
Okay, there we go. That was the end of that. So, yeah, a bit concerning, to be honest. Claims like trapped in the wrong body, claims like I was a boy. Very clear evidence of at least what they're saying. Like actual like delusion is crossing into, like, is worrying, and using the DSM to kind of rationalize it is risky business. I also don't like how we're kind of pathologizing just differences between people. But anyway, there we go, Kira. Yeah, amazing, amazing. How are we doing? How are we doing? 60 people watching. Hey, make sure you like the stream. Should be 60 likes at least. Probably ambitious, but hey, let's see.